And he set up a trap, Maher did, for Senator Schiff, which was very interesting. Watch this.
This statement from the administration: the president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you?
Totally vague.
Okay, because that's from Obama. Amazing the way we have these elections, and it seems like when I look before the election, boy, the ammunition that the Democrats have to fire is just, God, they're just loaded. And then it doesn't work. Why doesn't this message land?
You know, it landed in November.
For years, the name Adam Schiff has been tied to major investigations and plenty of political drama. But what happens when two outspoken media voices start asking the tougher questions? Recently, Megyn Kelly and Bill Maher stirred up a wave of curiosity by pushing back on the story surrounding Schiff. Are they highlighting details people may have overlooked? Or simply fueling fair, strong stories to the team of Adam Schiff? What they said has grabbed the attention of people on both sides, and the conversation keeps getting louder. Now the big question is simple. What truth might finally be coming into focus?
To shock the world right now and defend Adam Schiff. In response to the heat he's getting for the following clip.
It is an existential threat, Senator, and also
asleep.
I have not seen it yet, but from what I've heard about former FBI Director Ray,
someone in the audience behind
comments on 60
Pam
Minutes regarding China
is videotaping Adam Schiff.
If you're enjoying this, please subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you might realize. Recently, the political side of the internet seemed to wake up, and because somehow two very different media voices started focusing on the same political figure. It was almost like two comedians suddenly realizing they had landed on the exact same punchline. And the unexpected star of this slightly awkward comedy show turned out to be Adam Schiff.
We support Bernie Sanders' new legislation that calls for an annual, this is for you, Senator, an annual 5% wealth tax America's billionaires.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at Bernie's proposal, but I am supporting a Wyden proposal, Ron Wyden, which would basically put a tax on unrealized capital gains. So a lot of very, very wealthy people never have to sell all the assets they own. They pass them to their heirs. They live off of what they borrow from these appreciating assets, and so they don't have to pay tax on any of this.
The strange thing about the whole spectacle is that the commentary came from two very different corners of the media world. Yet somehow, the conclusion still landed right in the middle. Megyn Kelly found herself breaking down Adam Schiff's behavior with the kind of energy people usually have when they catch their neighbor lecturing everyone about healthy eating while secretly hiding 10 boxes of donuts in the garage.
Much more common is the Adam Shifty Schiff. Playing right up to his name in that position still. Like, playing right to his name. Very shifty, depending on who's doing the absolutely terrible thing that he can't stand. For the listening audience, sitting on the set with Shifty Schiff was Shifty Don Lemon, who was there to be lionized by Bill Maher. This is the love-hate we have with Bill, where he completely gives...
The whole situation started to feel like a political version of Who Wore It Better. Except instead of clothes, the debate was all about outrage. Then somewhere along the way, Bill Maher jumped into the conversation, turning the moment less into a serious courtroom argument and more into a stand-up comedy set, with Washington politicians as the occasional punchlines. Maher looked at Adam Schiff, the investigations, the speeches, and the years of hearings, and decided this moment needed less policy talk and a little more comedic air. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly delivered her criticism with the precision of someone presenting a carefully organized slideshow of political contradictions. Schiff seemed genuinely alarmed about Donald Trump and the use of military power, which sounds reasonable enough until you rewind and notice that the same outrage didn't really show up when Barack Obama authorized his own military actions.
So the FBI came in and arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York.
Meanwhile, the comedy side of political commentary clocked in for work. Megyn Kelly looked at the drama and seemed to decide that if politics is going to act like a circus, someone might as well bring the clown horn. Instead of delivering a long policy lecture, she leaned into the visual side of political satire, which quickly led her to focus on Adam Schiff's famously slender neck. The phrase pencil neck has floated around political conversations for years, but Kelly treated it like a comedy prop the universe had just handed her. On the more analytical side, she pushed the idea that principles should stick around like permanent tattoos, not fade away like temporary bumper stickers. Her commentary made one thing clear. When politicians condemn one president for decisions that look almost identical to ones they once defended, it starts to feel like a magician insisting the rabbit in the hat is somehow a completely different rabbit this time.
He identified himself as a longtime Democratic staffer. It's not a Republican operative. A Democratic staffer who was working in Democratic offices at the time of the alleged leaking in 16-17. This staffer was interviewed by FBI agents on several occasions and told those agents that then Congressman Adam Schiff was the one who approved the leaks to the media.
On the comedy stage, the jokes kept rolling as Bill Maher noticed the audience was loving the absurdity of it all. Instead of sticking to one gag and moving on, he played with the idea that if Adam Schiff really wanted to dig into the infamous Epstein investigation records, maybe all he needed was to sharpen that metaphorical pencil neck and poke around the papers like a detective searching under a couch cushion. The audience's laughter made it clear Maher had hit his mark. For years, he has treated American politics like an endless comedy buffet, and Schiff had just become the newest dish. Rather than delivering a dry lecture on congressional oversight, he approached the topic with the amused curiosity of someone watching a detective movie, where the lead investigator accidentally shows up to the crime scene with a giant pencil in hand.
The pardons, that was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
I see.
But I didn't.
The criticism didn't stop at the military debate, because the conversation eventually drifted into the sprawling world of the Russia investigations, a topic that already feels like a massive political scrapbook, filled with hearings, headlines, accusations, and televised drama. In Megyn Kelly's telling, Adam Schiff had spent years acting like the central detective in a national mystery, promising big revelations. But critics later argued the ending felt less like a blockbuster finale and more like a mystery novel that accidentally skipped its last 3 chapters. Meanwhile, the comedy kept rolling, as Bill Maher seemed fascinated by the contrast between Schiff's serious investigative image and the jokes swirling around him. Maher referenced Schiff's ongoing attempts to pressure the justice system, while Megyn Kelly highlighted Schiff's shifting tone under different administrations. She framed it as a classic example of the double standard that dominates American politics. Voters eventually notice when a politician looks furious under one president yet oddly calm under another, facing the same kind of controversy.
Now, this staff member began talking to the FBI in 2017 because he said he considered the leaks to be, quote, unethical, illegal, and treasonous. This is a Democrat staffer who is saying to the FBI he had a holy shit moment when he heard Adam Schiff give the order. These documents that outline the FBI's interview, like the FBI doesn't tape its interviews. They go back and they report what they heard.
Meanwhile, the comedy train didn't slow down. Bill Maher kept mining the visual humor in Adam Schiff's appearance, joking about investigative techniques that involve sharpening imaginary office supplies to sift through complex legal documents. The audience reacted like they usually do when a comedian stacks joke after joke, like a Jenga tower built entirely out of sarcasm. The bigger conversation kept circling the idea that political credibility fades when public officials shift their principles depending on the moment. In Megyn Kelly's framing, Schiff's critics see his positions moving across the political map so often they might need GPS coordinates just to keep up. At the same time, Maher turned the whole spectacle into a reminder that Washington politics sometimes produces characters made for late-night monologues. He treated Schiff not as a villain, but as a perfect comedic target, a strategy he's been using for decades with politicians from every corner of the ideological spectrum.
And so the FBI came in and arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Well,
The debate eventually expanded into a bigger conversation about selective outreach in Washington. When Megyn Kelly pointed out the differences in Adam Schiff's reactions to different presidents, the message was clear. Political loyalty can sometimes outweigh consistent principles. Her commentary painted a picture of a political arena where the rules seemed to shift depending on which party is in the White House. Meanwhile, the comedy angle stayed strong. Bill Maher kept sprinkling jokes throughout, treating the whole saga like a late-night sketch where investigators chase documents while comedians chase punchlines. The humor landed perfectly, because the mix of serious investigation and playful mockery felt almost surreal. The moment stood out even more because the criticism and comedy seemed to move in the same direction. Observers quickly noticed that Megyn Kelly and Maher rarely align on commentary, making this overlap feel like a rare alignment of political planets that usually orbit in opposite directions.
Didn't we just have a whole criminal investigation of Donald Trump for having documents at Mar-a-Lago that might have classified information in them, and we just can't have that. We can't have classified information running around out there in the hands of people who aren't authorized. Meanwhile, this is the former president of the United States who can declassify everything. We were told that for 2 years straight, the past 2 years by Democrats. And now what you're saying is that one of the most vocal about that, Adam Schiff, had been at the helm of releasing classified information to reporters.
By now, the whole saga had become a textbook example of modern political commentary, where serious accusations, media analysis, and stand-up comedy all collide within a single 24-hour news cycle. Right in the middle of it all is Adam Schiff, still giving speeches and filing requests. Meanwhile, critics like Megyn Kelly scrutinize his record, and comedians like Bill Maher keep turning Washington drama into a kind of political theater that keeps audiences glued to their screens. This rare overlap of sharp criticism and humor created a moment where the political conversation felt less like a formal debate and more like a strangely entertaining group chat spilled onto national television. Megyn Kelly used this platform to revisit Schiff's past actions, pointing out that the gap between suspense and outcome sometimes seemed big enough to derail an entire campaign. Her focus returned again and again to the theme of consistency, framing it as a pattern rather than a one-time slip. She argued that when politicians shift their tone depending on which administration they're judging, the public eventually notices. The frustration she highlighted wasn't just about Schiff. It reflected a broader political culture where outrage often works like a dimmer switch, brightening or fading depending on who occupies the White House.
I defend Adam Schiff because these confirmation hearings are boring. We put the highlights on TV, but having just sat through the one on Tuesday, and that was the spiciest of them all, they're boring.
It is. Having worked up on Capitol Hill for a long time, I know that it is when you're sitting through, especially, and those places are not comfortable, right? I mean, if you've ever been in one of those hearing rooms, there's a lot of droning on, there's a lot of talking, but it's also not very comfortable, and there are...
In that version of events, Adam Schiff became the clearest example of a political habit that many voters are tired of seeing. Meanwhile, the comedy side refused to stay in the background, with Bill Maher happily keeping the jokes rolling while serious arguments bounced around the studio. Maher has always had a gift for spotting absurdity in political theater, and Schiff supplied plenty of material. The contrast between Schiff's serious investigative style and Maher's playful mockery created a strange scene where a high-stakes political story started to feel like an episode of late-night improv. Maher leaned into the humor by exaggerating the investigative process, joking about how detectives sometimes need unconventional tools. In Schiff's case, apparently, a neck that could double as office equipment. That running gag about the pencil neck might sound childish at first, but it worked because political satire often thrives on simple, memorable images. Maher knew that once the audience starts laughing at a visual joke, the image sticks with the politician like a shadow. In comedy, that shadow becomes a permanent punchline, ready to be pulled out whenever the topic comes back into the spotlight.
watch the other channels to see what they're saying because we do live in two different universes. And when I see MSNBC or CNN, it's a lot about what you're saying. On Fox News, the talking point is always, let's just wrap this up because after all this time, there's no there there. What do you say?
At the same time, the discussion about government documents and transparency continued to hang over everything. Adam Schiff has recently pushed for access to information he believes should be available to investigators and the public, keeping him deeply involved in ongoing political battles over accountability. Supporters see his persistence as proof that he's doing the work of oversight. Critics, on the other hand, argue that his investigative style can feel like a never-ending treasure hunt, where the treasure always seems just over the next hill. The unusual mix of commentary styles turned the moment into a full-blown political spectacle. The clash of perspectives created a strange kind of harmony, with criticism and humor bouncing off each other from opposite sides of the stage. Through it all, Schiff stays right where he's been for years, at the center of a political storm, where every investigation, speech, and even eyebrow raise becomes another chapter in the ongoing drama of American politics. The difference this time? The storm includes both sharp criticism and relentless satire, giving the conversation around him the energy of a debate show that accidentally booked a stand-up comic as the closer.